Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. If you're new to the Authority File, you can listen to and find previous episodes on all of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and on our website, choice360.org. My guest for this series is Dr. Nicholas Lidstromer. Dr. Lidstromer is a specialist physician and a postgraduate researcher in artificial intelligence in medicine. He's a founder of an AI-powered medical platform and has been the head of medical AI at a variety of medtech companies. He's also the co-editor of the Springer Nature title published this year called Artificial Intelligence in Medicine, a reference work that covers the challenges, opportunities, and ethics in the use of AI in medicine. In this series, which is provided with support from Springer Nature, Dr. Lidstromer and I discuss his research background, his new book, How AI is Currently Being Used in Medicine, and where academic librarians fit in the growing research and availability of medical data in the field. In this third episode, we explore the ethics of artificial intelligence in medicine. So we've talked a little bit off and on. You've mentioned security and safety, especially with regard to privacy. So what are the implications of safety and privacy with AI in medicine? Where and how do these issues of privacy arise?
Yeah, this is a huge chapter. There are several chapters in the book about this, and then it's a widespread applicability of artificial intelligence systems, and they all hinge on their development and validation of large, diverse, representative data sets that are based on individuals and their ID characteristics. So anonymization, which is a simple way of taking away personal identification units or parts, that's one way of doing it. You can also do pseudonymization, where you usually have a provider that retains a special list or a record, a so-called lookup table. But there are many, many other ways of doing this. There are far more advanced ways of doing it now. But so, for instance, you have a decentralized record, a blockchain technique. You could have many, many other techniques. And I would say generally that different data sets may require different considerations. And for instance, you may have a completely perfectly anonymous or pseudonymized data set with a medical image, with no ID tags or anything on it, but still the physical characteristics per se may reveal who that is. And also there's a whole concept, I think, called PPML, privacy preserving machine learning, as a concept. So it's definitely a big concern. And as a general rule, one should avoid central storage of sensitive material. There should be a more decentralized platform. And actually, instead of sharing the original data, you could share only an algorithm on local sites for model training and so on. So you don't give the data, you give something else. And you can actually transmit model copies to sites at data residence for local training via so-called, it's called distributed computation techniques and federated, think about feathers, federated learning, FL. And there are different frameworks that are called like in silo, peer-to-peer, hub-spoke topology, and so on. So, and then one other thing which we must bring up is also that AI, computer-based. I mean, it's a computer-based technique. It's of course, obviously, and it's exposed to internet often, so it's vulnerable to attacks. It could be brute force attacks, ciphertext attacks, or whatnot, hacking attacks, and so on. So the whole science of encryption, of decryption, key generation, network performance, throughput, and so on. There are some of those considerations when you have a cloud-based AI-empowered medical platform, and actually, but the hacking per se can be used as something positive. I mean, I have a chapter about hackathons, how you can have a hackathon and have 1,000 hackers hacking into better algorithm for breast cancer or whatnot. So that's a positive way of using something negative.
Right.
And also, I would say regarding privacy. So it's and safety. I mean, privacy refers to identity, what safety is more like referring to the safety of the algorithm per se. So, in answer, who is responsible if the algorithm doesn't work, if it's fully biased, or if it's, and I think it's an analogy could be drawn to pharmaceutical substances in a clinical trial. You need to test it on an audience, and look into the training procedures, the raw data, how it has been treated, cleansed, washed, or prepared. So you have the old architecture of algorithms and how they were tested towards each other. Uh, I mean, often they are comparing algorithms with decryption, encryption in milliseconds, nanoseconds, and they are comparing which is the best
Hmm.
in many. So. But again, to answer the question, there's a whole forest of rules, legislation, regulatory, lattice work, so that I would say that derivate here, it all boils down to adaptability of the jurisprudence. I mean, the nature of the law has to stretch and encompass a completely new field,
Right.
which didn't exist before. So it's a novel animal in the legal theory.
Right. Yeah. So lots of things need to happen in coordination to make it all work. So you mentioned bias in the algorithms, and so bias and prejudice are often a focus of critically examining artificial intelligence, no matter what field it's in. Can you elaborate on the unique effects of biases and prejudices in medical AI? Where in medicine would these actually show up?
Yeah. It's absolutely unique in some senses, for AI particularly. There are several chapters dealing with it. I mean, we have chapters on gender aspects, reproductive aspects, artificial intelligence for Africa, and so on. And for instance, we have dermatology apps, just to take an example.
Hmm.
Those are mostly trained on European white skin. And I remember I personally came into contact with dermatologists from Brazil. And in Brazil, they have a very diverse ethnicity, and the skin pattern and the skin color and temperature can be very different. So there's a for instance, there's a global derma project. I connected a Brazilian team with a Swiss team so they could actually train also an African skin, because that's, of course, a bias. If you have an app which has never seen an African skin,
Of course. Yeah.
it likely won't work, would work much less. And a unique feature of biases in AI, particularly, I think, is that many people and doctors, especially the skeptical ones, they regard AI as a black box, as something, some mumbo jumbo happening in a box. And I think it's an incorrect notion for a researcher in AI such as me. It's not precisely a black box. If you ask a mathematician such as Professor Unina Eldar, it is not a black box. It's mathematically, it's something that you can mathematically unbox.
Hmm.
And I think we could compare with the Renaissance, where we started to systematically dissect corpses. New medical students of the future, or of the present day, should also be able to dissect algorithms. And I think if you do, the hidden biases may float up to the surface. So it's like an analogy with the pharmaceutical industry again. If you have a drug with an adverse effect, which only happens in African women, then of course you can't claim generalizability. You can't sell it just universally without having that caveat. I mean, it's the same with AI. You need to be aware of systematic biases of various sorts, which can infiltrate the algorithm. It's just important to see that it's not invisible.
Right. Right. So, a chapter in your book discusses the ethics of incorporating AI into medicine, arguing that it must, quote, align with the ethical principles of medicine. What are those principles, and how is it advised that AI be aligned with those?
Yeah, I mean, some general ones. I mean, you have autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and so on. To take
Right.
an autonomy, for instance, I mean, we talk about informed decisions or informed consent. So the patient must receive full background info about the risks, the benefits, if there are any alternative treatments, and so on. And if an AI algorithm had a significant impact on the diagnosis. I mean, practitioners integrate AI into clinical decision making. So we need to inform the patient about AI and why and how it is used. And that can be a tricky task because AI will be used everywhere.
Mm.
So it's a question also of general education in schools. That what is AI? It's not a malignant robot that will eat someone. I mean, it's definitely just a way of treating big data and drawing conclusions. So, and regarding beneficence, that's the obligation to promote well-being, and
Mm.
that's also another foundational principle of healthcare. Uh, and AI is already used massively, as I said. But one problem is that AI algorithms can recommend, for instance, an intervention that is beneficial to society or to the general population, but not to the individual. It may harm the individual even. So some segment of individuals can be harmed. I mean, a special case are rare diseases that can cost a lot, but there are very few individuals. So there's a delicate question, and how many we can treat for a certain cost, because resources are only theoretically infinite, but they
Hmm.
aren't practically. And non-maleficence is, of course, not to do harm, and there we have the privacy and the safety question again. And if something happens, we have the basic justice question, of course. And as we mentioned, the fundamental impact on the physician-patient relationship. But I think as a bottom line, we will see an empowered patient, a more equal patient, and with integrated access to health data and a more precise, individualized medicine. So I see
Right.
it more positively.
Hmm. Yeah, and speaking of that, describe the importance of contesting AI decision making. How do we make sure patients have the transparency they need, and the ability to make the right challenges when they need to?
Yes. Formally, the right to contest AI in medical decisions, or it is a right that must be grounded on a few basic assumptions. I mean, it's grounded in moral values,
Hmm.
in effectively protecting human rights, and it must be proportional to the potential costs to others, and also an application of the general right to contest medical decisions. I mean, in general. So I think that substantially the right to contest AI. To contest AI medical decisions should enable patients to contest the AI system's use of personal sensitive data for the first, and secondly, the system's potential biases.
Hmm.
Those biases can be different between different AI systems. And thirdly, the system performance, and also fourthly, the division between labor, or the labor between system and healthcare professionals. So there are different ways of looking at it. I think for those who want to read more about it, there's an excellent chapter in I think it's number 15 in the book, which only deals with contestability and the right to it.
Right. Yeah, that's what inspired the question.
Yeah. All right.
I saw that chapter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the hallmarks of academic librarianship is advocating for the protection of patron data. I'm curious to hear what you might think, what role librarians could play in educating patrons on the ownership and use of their own personal data.
Yes, this is a very special question. I mean, patients themselves may directly receive very advanced and detailed information about the condition with increased availability with genomics, omics, and so on. Patients may have been diagnosed directly at home or with various AI-driven applications or via online testing and so on. So patients may, of course, research on their own and directly contact a librarian.
Mm.
And generally, I think it's like I see librarians as part of the general education, as cultural beacon of society in that sense. So it's informing about general human rights, even is on par with that question. I think it's like. And also what someone searches for reveals a lot about the person, so that's also
Right.
a private issue. I mean,
Mhm.
if you have access to somebody's Google searches, that's definitely very sensitive, could be. So the librarian is part of a cultural institution, and as such, you have a special power position. I saw Angela Carter said that language is power, life, and the instrument of culture, the instrument of domination and liberation, close
Mm.
quote. And I think patient co-ownership and like the very answer to the question is actually a question of medical liberation of the individual.
Mhm.
So liberal question.
You just heard from Dr. Nicholas Lidstromer. Dr. Lidstromer is a specialist physician and a postgraduate researcher in artificial intelligence in medicine. He's a founder of an AI-powered medical platform and has been the head of medical AI at a variety of medtech companies. He's also the co-editor of the Springer Nature title published this year called Artificial Intelligence in Medicine, a reference work that covers the challenges, opportunities, and ethics in the use of AI in medicine. This series is brought to you with support from Springer Nature. Join us next week as we look at the current trends and future developments and innovations with artificial intelligence in medicine.
And another example is transdermal optical imaging. With the mobile phone camera, you can actually direct it towards the face, and you can get blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, cardiac output, stress level, and so on. And there are some attempts with infrared camera where they have tried, not so successfully, but they have tried in to some parts they've shown even blood glucose level and even long-term blood glucose level, which is it's an explanation of how they can calculate that. But I mean, there are some quite insane applications, and the market will be flooded with that. And of course, that will have a huge impact on patient power, I think.
As always, underwriting opportunities for the Authority File podcast are directed by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer, with support from digital media assistant, Ashley Roy. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.